You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 164 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. This week will be part 2 of the SAA and COSA Speaker meeting from this past May, and this one will be featuring Brandon P. speaking on behalf of SAA. At the meeting, Brandon was introduced by his sponsee, Jamie, and you may remember Jamie from episode 10, and they were also recently on episode 159 talking about sponsorship. And as shared in the recording, both of them have been involved in service in the San Francisco Fellowship, and especially secretarying the Saturday morning 8:15 meeting, which is a very large meeting. Pre-pandemic, it was well over 100. Post-pandemic, it's still a very, very large meeting. But yeah, I can remember seeing both of them as the meeting secretary whenever I made my way up to San Francisco. Usually did that when going to intergroup. I would make a day of it and drive up to the San Francisco meeting and then drive across the bay for intergroup. So it was really great to hear both of them on this recording. The very end of Brandon's share, he paraphrased a vision for you from the AA Big Book, and so I wanted to use that as the reading for this episode. And this comes from page 164 in the AA Big Book. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So yeah, great reading. Some meetings will use this as the closing for the meeting instead of the 9th step promises. I've seen various other readings at meetings, but yeah, I really, really love this one. After the recording, I do have an email to read, as well as some music to share. Some of it coming from friends' suggestions through text, and a few songs that have come up in my meetings, both online and at my home meeting. It's just a nice coincidence, and I will be sharing the story of that at the end of this episode. But the coincidence was just too striking, and I thought that I would share that here on the podcast. So yeah, look forward to those after the recording. I also wanted to mention that the very beginning of the recording, there was a little glitch on Zoom, so you might have a hard time making out Jamie's name. But I tried to edit it the best that I could. And so now, without further ado, here is Jamie introducing Brandon P. at the SAA and COSA Speaker meeting that happened this past May. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm a sex addict. I remember entering the program in 2015 and going to the Saturday morning meeting, the consummate meeting of the program, where you went for solid recovery. And who was the secretary but Brandon? That seminal meeting, and he was leading it. I knew that he had something special right then and there. He had a welcoming spirit and a calm demeanor, and he led a room of over 100 addicts with his kind voice and his giving ethos. He exuded recovery from the moment I saw him, and it was a while before I would meet him. Having met him, however, Brandon is grace, humility, kindness, generosity. He listens, he reflects, he offers wisdom rather than advice. He offers a big heart and logic in equal measure. He laughs, he feels deeply. How fortunate I am to have him as my sponsor. How grateful to call him a friend and a mentor. And how lucky you all are to hear his experience, strength, and hope this evening. He certainly inspires me. May he inspire you.
Thank you, Jamie. I love you. I'm so touched by your introduction. And wow. And Judith, thank you for your share. I really wasn't expecting there to be so many similarities between us. I thought we were going to be like the heads and tails of the meeting, but it turns out we're all just the metal in between. The heads and tails stuff is just facades. And Michael and Cindy, thank you for having me and for having this meeting. I just want to talk about the last time I acted out. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, plotting and planning. My fiance was going to go away for a long weekend. She was going to fly back to New York to be with her family, to send out the 400 wedding invitations to all the people across the globe who were coming to our wedding to pick out outfits. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was so excited to be home on my own so I could act out. And I remember driving her to the airport, and all of a sudden I was so sad. I thought I would be excited, but I was profoundly, profoundly sad. And I didn't know what it was about, but I dropped her off. I headed back into San Francisco, and I'm driving towards my acting out partner's place. And there on the sidewalk, I see two friends of ours walking their little doggy. And these are good friends of ours. They'd recently gotten married. And I just remember seeing this little emerging family and thinking, this is what I want. Like, I want this so freaking badly, but I'm never going to have it. That was one of many moments when I could have turned around and not acted out. But of course, I went on, I acted out. And then a little less than a month later, I went on my bachelor party. I went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming with like 22 guys. I picked that place because I love to ski and because I knew if I went somewhere that was like Las Vegas or something like that, I wouldn't spend any time with my friends. I would just be acting out and doing drugs the whole time. And on the last day of the bachelor party, my fiance stopped answering my texts. And the only text I got from her was on the way home. She said, not feeling very well. I'm going to the doctor. Can you meet me at this cafe when you get home? And my stomach dropped because I knew that she had found out that I'd been cheating on her. And so I got back to San Francisco and I went to the Crossroads Cafe, is the name of the place. And there she was sitting at a table. She said, Brandon, I know you've been cheating on me. We're done. I'm calling off the wedding. And here are the various things you need to do to extract your life from mine. And you have 3 days to do it. I pleaded. I promised, even though in the back of my head I knew I was lying. I would just go back to my ways. This is what I had always done through relationship after relationship. But she held firm. And I had a decision to make when I left there. Do I drive to the bridge and throw myself off of it, or do I go home? And by the grace of God, I went home. I spent the night looking up ways to kill myself. I drank NyQuil, a bunch of NyQuil to fall asleep. And the next day, my fiance gave me a gift. She called my best friend and told him, and he came over and essentially saved me. He helped me move out. He got me in touch with his brother, who I'd known since childhood. And turns out his brother is a sex addict in recovery. And he told me to get the big book of AA and read the promises, which I did. And I thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And I just kept thinking, how can I get my fiance back? And I remained suicidal because I'd done this before. This was the story of my life. I was a serial monogamist and a serial cheater, and I'd hurt so many people. And I wanted to be married to someone and be monogamous, but I couldn't. And I kept hurting people. And I truly believed that I didn't deserve to occupy space in the world because I was just this mechanism of pain. When my friends realized that I was truly a harm to myself, they took me to Stanford Hospital and checked me into the psych ward. And I remember being there in spring of 2013 and just feeling like an imposter. There's people here with like real mental illness. People are having electric shock therapy and people who are, have schizophrenia. And I'm just here because I'm an asshole. I mean, that's what I thought in my mind. Amazingly, they did not take my phone away while I was there. I kept calling my fiance over and over again. And eventually, I called her so much that her parents reached out to mine. Mine had come in from Georgia to be there. And they had like a mini intervention in the hospital and said, you have to stop calling her. Like she's not taking you back. Like you have to move on and you have to go to treatment. And treatment was really expensive. I mean, really, really expensive. I didn't have enough money to go to treatment. My parents were going to have to pay for it. And I said to my dad, I was like, well, Dad, what if I go to treatment and I get out and I just keep doing it? And he said, well, then we'll just do the next thing. I just felt so loved in that moment. I've been waiting for my dad to kind of come and rescue me my whole life, really. And in that moment, I realized he loved me so much, and it was just enough to break through the denial and get me to say, okay, I'll go. And so I flew to Mississippi and I entered treatment on Easter Sunday. I started doing the stuff thinking I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to get sober and I'm going to get back and I'm going to win her back. And about a week and a half into treatment, I got a letter from a lawyer threatening a restraining order if I ever contacted her again. And I remember one of the counselors gave me feedback about that and said, what a gift she gave you, a firm boundary. And I thought, what the it's not a gift at all. This is a nail in the coffin of the thing that I was living for. But I also started to realize that maybe there was something bigger at play here. And I realized, okay, I'm on my own. I got to do this for myself. There are a few things that I learned in rehab that were critical. I mean, I hated myself. I wanted to kill myself. I hated myself. And I started saying affirmations in rehab, and I started just reading them silently. And then I was able to say them aloud. And eventually I was able to even cite them to myself in a mirror. That took years. But here are a few of them that were really helpful. I have them on my wall next to me because I still need them. I still need to remind myself that I like myself unconditionally and I enjoy being the unique person that I am. And I am not my actions. I am the actor. My actions may be good or bad. That doesn't make me good or bad. And finally, I'm a worthwhile and lovable human being. One of my counselors in rehab said, if you could have outsmarted this, you would have. If you could have loved enough to stop what you were doing, you would have done it. If you cared enough, you would have stopped. But you're powerless. And that was the first time I really understood that I'm powerless and that I can't trust my own brain. And so that's another thing that I learned in rehab was to live in consultation. And that's what we do in the program, right? Every time we pick up the phone, every time we go to a meeting and share, every day when I call my sponsor, I am living in consultation because I can't trust what's going on up here. It's humbling, but it's also been very freeing. Also, while I was in treatment, I admitted that I was a drug addict and alcoholic too. My bottom came from my sex addiction, and I was hoping to come back and still have those things to numb me out. But it was clear that I am a triple winner, as they say. The other thing I learned in rehab was that the narrative of my life was flawed. This is something where I really related to you, Judith. I grew up in an affluent suburb of New York, material comfort I never wanted for anything. And I thought that maybe my sex addiction was just the fact that I was a spoiled brat. My mom used to call me a spoiled brat all the time when I was a kid. Maybe this is just who I am. I'm spoiled. But in treatment, I started to unpack the relationship with my parents, to remember all the times my mother threatened to kill herself and how she'd say, one day you'll come home and find me dead and you'll wish you treated me better. And I also remembered that the first few times she said this, I was terrified and pleaded with her not to do it, probably 5 or 6. But by the time I was 7 or 8 and she'd done it so many times, I knew it wasn't real. I just started to get really, really angry. I had so much rage, but it wasn't safe to express rage. And so I just stuffed it. I had this vast reservoir of anger. And I now realized, the reservoir of anger, she was the only woman in my life. It was towards her. but it ended up manifesting towards women. Accepting that I was an angry person was actually even harder than accepting that I'm a sex addict. And just in treatment, I confronted my mom about this, and she lies about everything. But in that moment, she didn't lie about it, and she said, "Well, that was just rhetoric." And I was like, "How is a kid supposed to understand what rhetoric is?" My father later admitted that she would say the same thing to him, and that he had no idea she was saying it to me, which is true because he was never around. I mean, he worked long hours, golf on the weekends, running marathons, just anything to get away from us. That was his solution. So, finished treatment, I moved to SF and moved into sober living. And that's when I started going to SAA meetings. One of my first Saturday morning meetings was on the day I was supposed to be married. And I made a point of sitting at the table that morning and sharing. And I just remember being welcomed with such love and open arms and understanding. And it was around that time that I found my sponsor, who is still my sponsor today. One of the first things we did was we figured out my inner circle. It is contacting sex workers, sex outside of a committed relationship, alcohol or drugs. So I mentioned I'm an alcoholic or drug addict. I've been very fortunate that I just work this program with those things in my inner circle. Pornography, strip clubs or massage parlors, and adult sites or classifieds. My middle circle is pretty big. I just want to cite a couple of things that have been really helpful for me. This one, in early recovery, I had lies not resolved within 24 hours in my middle circle. And I've come to understand that lying is just as much a symptom of this disease as acting out. So I need to be rigorously honest. And if I'm not, I need to clean it up immediately. I loved, Judith, you said in your poem something like, "Truth is the silent cure." It absolutely is. And masturbation. I don't masturbate. I masturbated once in 12 years. And that's just for me. Everybody has their own relationship to it, but it doesn't work for me. That one time I did, it was like for a medical reason. And it was not good. I mean, I went right to fantasy. So it doesn't work for me. When I'm not masturbating, the fantasy subsides. I went to a meeting a day for many years. I was lucky to work in downtown San Francisco, where there was a lunchtime meeting at Old St. Mary's. I made tons of program calls to people who have what I wanted, and then a lot of people who are newer than me, to share like any strength and hope I could. I did my first step. I remember my first time doing my fifth step was really challenging. Because I was a huge pothead too coming into the program, so I thought, like, I don't care about anything. You do something to me, it just falls right off. And I had like 100 resentments on that thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a really resentful person. I remember doing my ninth step for the first time, and again, I had like 100 people on there. Some of the people that I hurt, I decided not to reach out to because it would harm them. But one person who was, just a friend, but I owed an amends to, he said to me, "You know what? It sucks that you had to go through what you did, but you're so lucky because we all do things that we wish we could clean up, but you actually you have to for your program." It was one of the first times I started to realize how lucky we really are being in recovery. I was told to wait a year before dating. I think I mentioned I'd been a serial monogamist. That was really hard for me. I wanted to start dating again, so I started 7 months in, and I wasn't ready. That first relationship was not good. I didn't know who I was. I still didn't love myself as a person yet. And when she told me it wasn't a good fit, I was totally devastated. And I thought about acting out. And instead I went and I ate a pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. So the lesser of the evils, for me at least. And after that I decided to take time to be on my own. And somebody in the program told me to take myself on self dates. And so I bring a good book to, a restaurant I wanted to eat at. And I go sit there and I felt awkward, but then I was engrossed in my book and actually enjoying being with myself. And for me, I've always loved the outdoors. And I started going on these solo backpacking trips, just, getting out there in the middle of the woods and running around by myself and just starting to feel really self-sufficient. And I also got in shape and, I ran a bunch of half marathons and the full marathon and the triathlon. And, I'd never been in shape before. And I just started to feel really, really good about myself. And eventually I finished the 12 steps and I took a break before starting in on them again. This was almost 2 years into the program, and it was about Christmas time. And I took myself on a self date to go see a concert at the Jazz Center. And it was a weekend evening. It felt like there were couples and families everywhere. And I just felt really, really lonely. My parents were about to come in. I was feeling all types of fear about that. And I got into my car. And on my drive home, I stopped and spoke to a sex worker and negotiated a price. And somehow after that, I kept going. I went home. But contacting sex workers is in my inner circle. So that was, 10 years and 3 or 4 months ago. And that was really good for me, actually, because I am a perfectionist. So to have that slip was good for my perfectionism. It was also a good experiment because I'd still been going to meetings every day. I'd been, making tons of calls, calling my sponsor. The only variable was the steps. I had taken a break from the steps. And so for me, and I heard you say this too, Judith, like the steps are primary. That's the thing that keeps me sober. All the other stuff helps a lot with my life, my serenity, everything, my sense of purpose and meaning, but the steps keep me sober. Eventually, I started dating again. I had to put really stringent parameters in place. No sex before disclosure, before 3 dates. I also wanted to just go to dinner with everybody, but my sponsor's like, no, talk on the phone first. He's so mad. He's like, what if they have an annoying voice? Do you really want to spend the whole time? So yeah, call them first, then have coffee, and then maybe dinner. I met a number of really, really wonderful. It was my first time really meeting women and getting to know them in a real way and starting to think, does this fit with what I'm looking for in my life? And I loved it. It was really fun. But there was one date in particular where I went out with a woman, and afterwards I wrote in my 10th step, which I sent to my sponsor and to a friend who's on here, I may have just met my wife. Okay, I know that's incredibly dramatic, but wow, that was an amazing first date, and I'm positively glowing from it. A little bit about her. She's a doctor and passionate about her career. She's easygoing and delightful to talk to. She has an amazing laugh. She gets up at 5 every morning to work out. She has many close girlfriends. She's really tight with her family. She seems really smart and insightful. And so on my third date with her, I disclosed, probably premature. And after I told her my story, she said, well, I definitely wouldn't have liked the person you were, but I really liked the person who's sitting next to me. I'd also told her during my disclosure that I read Out of the Shadows, and that was like reading my life story, Patrick Carnes' book. And so before our fourth date, she went out and read Out of the Shadows. And she came to that date with questions. And she asked me a lot of tough questions. One of the questions was, have you acted out with men? And I hadn't, but I took the opportunity to tell her that I had acted out with trans women. And, I don't feel ashamed of that at all. I understand that that's what I did. If anything, I feel ashamed of fetishizing a really vulnerable part of our society. I mention this because I can't tell you how good it feels after carrying so many secrets around, just to have nothing. There's nothing, that could come roaring out of my past that could shake the foundation of our relationship. It's all out in the open. And so we got married in July of 2018. My sponsor officiated it. A fellow read a poem. There was a ton of fellows there. And I got really choked up when I came to my vow that said, I vow to honor and cherish you and to remain true to you in my heart, mind, and body. It's not that I didn't believe it. It's just that I was overwhelmed with the fact that I could say that and believe it. Our son was born in 2019. His name means gift from God. He was born at 3 a.m. At 3:01, my sponsor texted me to say he was thinking of me and he loves me. In 2022, we had a daughter. Her middle name is Grace, from Shame to Grace. And I wasn't sure I wanted kids when I met my wife. I thought that ship had maybe sailed, but she had nieces that were always around, and these 2 little girls were so amazing, and I loved who I was with them. And I realized I had a lot to give to children, and that I could be a good father, and thanks to this program, I am. But things aren't perfect. Things get swirly. I recently had a very, very close call on my sobriety and put myself in a situation that could have jeopardized my sobriety, my family, everything. And I think I had accumulated just enough grace to get through that situation unscathed, but it's not something that I want to do again. And I need to set clear boundaries and have put those in place. And, life continues to happen on life's terms. My parents, I still have a challenging relationship with them, and their health was failing. So I had to move them here from the East Coast a few years ago. And I flew to Savannah, Georgia, where they were. I had to basically mandate, look, you have to move. When I showed up at their door, my father had balance issues. He was on the floor where he'd been for over 24 hours because they didn't want to call the EMTs again to get him up because they didn't want to bother them. So I told them we're moving. And my mom said, oh, you know what? I think I'll just kill myself instead. And I said to her, well, do you think you could do it tomorrow? Because we're leaving on Sunday and that'll give me time to deal with it and then leave. And it felt like a triumph, right? Because that was the thing that scared me my entire life. And I'm like, get out of here with your BS. I moved them out here. I moved them 5 times in 18 months for various reasons. I mean, oh my gosh. But thanks to the program, I did not go insane. Came close, but I didn't go insane. I still have defects. I'll say my defects have changed quite a bit over time. My primary defects coming into the program were extremely passive. I was a consummate people pleaser, really conflict avoidant, and they've shifted. They're more active now. Controlling comes up, impatience comes up. It's interesting how they move around, but certainly controlling and impatience, especially around my parents. And I know I got to clean up my side of the street, for my own sobriety and serenity when they do come up. Sometimes I think to myself that if there were a pill that would cure my sex addiction, I would definitely take it. I have a hard time with the fact that I'm always, 1 or 2 bad decisions away from destroying my life, from harming my wife and children irrevocably. That scares the shit out of me. So I would take the pill. But I would keep coming back to the program because it's the things that I hadn't anticipated that are the real gifts. I came here to get sober, to stop acting out. I didn't realize this personal growth that would occur. I'm on my 5th trip through the steps. I'm on my 9th step right now. And the last time I did my first step, I've done the first step on sex addiction a bunch of times. So I did it on a defect that had plagued me my entire life, my inner critic and self-doubt. And that voice has never been so quiet. It's amazing. It's amazing. And this time I did it on anger because my anger has flourished since my parents moved out here. And it's actually starting to become more manageable. And I'm not there yet, but I'm beginning to get an inkling of what forgiveness would look like for my mom and also to my dad. I used to view all relationships as transactional and spent my first year in recovery wondering, how am I going to pay this back to my sponsor? He's giving me so much. He's talking to me, sharing all of his wisdom. He's taking me through the steps. And it took me a while to realize I can only pay it forward. And I have amazing sponsees who in turn are paying it forward to their sponsees. I do try to be of service. I try to welcome newcomers and give them my number. And I'm here today sharing with you just in case there's someone who is where I was 13 years ago. I am living proof of the fact that this program can change your life beyond your wildest dreams. And I'm so grateful to everybody who came before me for blazing the trail, and to everyone who is here now trudging the road of happy destiny with me. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I'm totally fine with that. God does, and I know God's going to get me where I need to go, and I have a feeling you're all going to be there. Thanks.
Many thanks to Brandon for sharing at the SAA and COSA Speaker meeting. And although I've known him for several years, this was the first time I really got to hear his story. Like I had mentioned, I remember seeing him as the secretary of the San Francisco morning meeting, seen him around at the retreat and had a chance to talk. But this was the first time I really got to hear his story. I really appreciate what he had to say about resetting his sobriety. I too have recently reset my sobriety. A few years ago, I had redrawn my circles to include avoidant behavior. And like I had mentioned in the last episode, I've been in avoidance around several things in my life over the past few months, not only in my relationship with my wife, but also things at home, my health, answering emails, etc. My wife called out some of my behaviors, and I owned up to things that I've been doing to avoid intimacy. According to the wording in my inner circle, I've not been maintaining my intimate connection with my wife over the past few months, and so I reset my sobriety date. I don't regret it at all, and has actually been pretty helpful in letting go of my own perfectionism and allowing a new level of surrender. Since that difficult discussion, things have been going a lot better. Both my wife and I are trying to get out of our avoidant behaviors, not only in our relationship, but things around the house and our health. I finally made an appointment to get my hip checked out, which has been a problem for the past few years, and it looks like I'll be needing a hip replacement soon. And as awful as that sounds, I'm really looking forward to feeling better. All of this happened a few days before my birthday, and so it made for a bit of a difficult week. However, I did get to see Metallica with my son on my birthday weekend, and I also got a live stream ticket for the all-day metal fest that celebrated Ozzy and Black Sabbath. An incredible day, all day long, of watching some stellar performances, and Tool actually played, so I was super excited to see a pro shot live stream of Tool, the first time they've done that in a few decades. That was awesome. So music was definitely there to lift me up. A lot going on with Intergroup this past few weeks. We just had our visioning meeting and looking at redesigning the website. My wife and I have been working on the background stuff, trying to get some of the data together to migrate over to our new web team for that, and excited about the possibilities of moving forward with the website. So that being said, I did want to read an email. We did receive a few talking about wanting to share their stories here on the podcast. But being that it's taken me so long to actually get to recording the intro and outro, I'm just going to focus on one email this week. And this one came in the middle of June, and I'm going to be using initials like always. And it says, "Hi Jason, Jay here, grateful recovering porn addict. I just discovered the podcast a few days ago, thanks to a fellow in PAA recommending it." And before I move on, PAA is Porn Addicts Anonymous. Back to the email. "And I just finished listening to episode 9, I Came to Believe Finding a Higher Power Through Music on my commute home today. I see the specific songs mentioned in the episode listed in the episode description, but I was wondering if you have a full list of all your recovery and addiction related songs available to share. A Spotify playlist with them would be amazing. Really enjoying the podcast so far. Thanks for your service. Thanks, signed Jay." And I replied, "Hi Jay, thanks so much for writing in. Yes, I do have playlists available on both Spotify and Apple Music. More info below. Additionally, I started adding YouTube links to the songs in the show notes from episode 21 onward. On episode 129, I talked about my personal spiritual mixes and creating playlists for the podcast listeners. I ended up creating a playlist for all of the music played on the podcast, and that one is entitled SARP, Music and Recovery. It also includes music that is unrelated to recovery but shared on the podcast, like some parts of episode 9, I talk about my background in music, episode 50, talking about metal, and episode 88, talking about ska. The other playlist, SARP Spiritual Mixes, is a compilation of my personal spiritual mix CDs, referenced both on episode 9 and 129. And I did put links for both of those playlists on both Apple and Spotify. Back to my response. Additionally, episode 138 was all about my program friends talking about punk and hardcore, and I decided to create a separate playlist of the 72 songs just for that one episode. And it looks like I haven't updated the music and recovery playlist on Spotify since episode 139 and on Apple Music since episode 149, but I will try to update those soon. I hope this helps. Please let me know if you have any song suggestions for future episodes of the podcast. Cheers, Jason. So yeah, like I had mentioned, I have not updated the playlists. The music and recovery playlist is now up over 300 songs, and my spiritual mixes is a little over 200 songs. And I will be leaving links for those in the show notes, and eventually on the new website, I hope to have a place to post the links to those playlists, as well as more information about the music that I've played here on the podcast. And thinking of that, there was some music that I wanted to play for this episode. And a few of these I received from my friends in program. On last week's episode, I read some meditations from Luke, and Luke had also texted me a few songs, and there's a couple that he mentioned from a band called AJR, and I'm finally getting to share that here on the podcast. The other song that he mentioned that I may play on another episode later is called Sober Up. But the song that I wanted to play for this one is called Inertia, and this is the acoustic version of it.
Inertia, I've worn the same skinny jeans since I was 15. It's probably nothing, inertia. My friends say they're quitting this week to chase down their dreams. They're probably bluffing, but don't you like it bigger, better, but you do what you can. Don't you like a little better when you don't understand? I was gonna save the planet, but today I got plans. I guess this is just what I am. Amen.
Object in motion, I've lost all emotion. My two legs are broken, but look at me dance. An object in motion, don't ask where I'm going, 'cause where I am going is right where I am.
Where I am going is right where I am.
Yeah, so cool. And yeah, like Luke had mentioned in his text, he's said, maybe a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but wanted me to give it a listen. And yeah, super awesome. I may save the song Sober Up for another episode. I did end up listening to a few of their other songs as well, and it's really, really cool. Another one coming from not Brandon P, but my friend Brandon L, who was on episode 44 of the podcast when he did his first step. He sends me things every now and then, and we have a nice chit chat around it. But he sent me a song from Morgan Wallen, country artist. And I did not think that I would appreciate it as much as I did. I ended up listening to most of the entire album that this came from. And there are a lot of really good recovery-based songs on that. Morgan Wallen's album is called I'm the Problem. And the song that I wanted to play is called Genesis. And so here that is right now.
Wish I could take all these troubles and put them back in a bottle. Wish I could take all them girls and take them home. Swear it's all in the past until I do it tomorrow. When am I gonna learn? I guess I probably won't. I can't leave them alone. From the time I wake up to the time I lay down, it's the devil's playground everywhere that I look. Swear it's there in my blood. I was born to be lost. Lot of lines that I crossed, little more than I should. I'm losing me too. Pretty eyes and the proof. He knew what I battled. He knew what would tempt me. He threw out the apple. Said let there be women and let there be whiskey.
Thank you so much for that. And I love being wowed by something that I did not think that I would like. And like I mentioned, I added this whole album to my library and have been listening to it. And there's a lot of songs on there, but a lot of really good ones that I may use for a future episode. Thank you for that one. So the last two songs that I wanted to play, just a really funny story. During fellowship at one of our meetings a few weeks ago, Albert, who had just shared his first step on episode 162, was talking about a poem called Desiderata by Les Crane. And when he started reading the lines, it sounded really familiar to me. So what I know of is the poem being spoken word set to music. And as he was reading the lyrics, it reminded me that years and years ago, well back 30 years, I remember hearing on the Dr. Demento radio show, and if anyone is old enough to remember, Dr. Demento used to play comedy records, silly songs, parodies. Weird Al Yankovic did a lot of stuff with Dr. Demento. But there was a parody of this called Deteriorata, and this was from National Lampoon. And doing some research here, the music was written by Christopher Guest, and a lot of you may know Christopher from Saturday Night Live, Spinal Tap, a lot of the other movies that he's made, The Best in Show. He was also in The Princess Bride. Very funny guy. And so, yeah, I didn't know that he was part of this, but Desiderata was a poem set to music in 1971. And the National Lampoon version came out in 1972. So that being said, at my in-person meeting this past week, someone had picked out a reading from one of our books, and then instead of doing a share, decided to do something different and put out a speaker on the table and started playing the audio for Desiderata. And we had just had that conversation in fellowship the week before, and I started smiling. This share was definitely different and off-putting a little bit because, we usually share about recovery, but, this guy just really wanted to share the message of Desiderata. As the shares were going around, came around to me, and I retold the story of our fellowship and talking about the parody Deteriorata and reading some of the lyrics. So before playing any music, I did want to read a little of each. I'm not sure exactly what part of the songs I'm going to play for post-production, but I'll read the opening stanzas for each of these. Desiderata by Les Crane. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. And if you compare yourselves with others, you may become vain and bitter. For always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Moving on to the parody, Deteriorata from National Lampoon. Go placidly amid the noise and waste, and remember what comfort there may be in owning a piece thereof. Avoid quiet and passive persons unless you are in need of sleep. Rotate your tires. Speak glowingly of those greater than yourselves, and heed their advice, even though they be turkeys. Know what to kiss and when. Consider that 2 wrongs never make a right, but that 3 do. Wherever possible, put people on hold. Be comforted that in the face of all aridity and disillusionment, and despite the changing fortunes of time, there will always be a big future in computer maintenance. I loved hearing that when I was listening to Dr. Demento. So when Albert shared the Desiderata and Fellowship, and then I heard it again at our meeting last week, I thought these would be really perfect for the podcast to play. At first, I am going to play a clip from Desiderata by Les Crane.
Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career. However humble, it is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself.
You are a child.
You are a child of the universe. No less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should.
Love the sentiment of this. And it's really, really calming. And now, for the flip side, to have a laugh, here is a parody of that with National Lampoon's Deteriorata.
Remember the Pueblo. Strive at all times to bend, fold, spindle, and mutilate. Know yourself. If you need help, call the FBI. Exercise caution in your daily affairs, especially with those persons closest to you. That lemon on your left, for instance. Be assured that a walk through the ocean of most souls would scarcely get your feet wet. Fall not in love, therefore. It will stick to your face. Gracefully surrender the things of youth, birds, clean air, tuna, Taiwan, and let not the sands of time get in your lunch. Hire people with hooks. For a good time, call 606-4311. Ask for Ken. Take heart amid the deepening gloom that your dog is finally getting enough cheese, and reflect that whatever misfortune may be your lot, it could only be worse in Milwaukee. You are a fluke of the universe. You have no right to be here. And whether you can hear it or not, the universe is laughing behind your back.
It's so funny. I'm going to read the last bit of each of these. So going back to Desiderata. And this also reminds me of the reading that I chose at the beginning, A Vision for You. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be careful. Strive to be happy. And then moving over to Deteriorata, this line has stuck with me for decades. Therefore, make peace with your God, whatever you perceive him to be, hairy thunderer or cosmic muffin. With all its hopes, dreams, promises, and urban renewal, the world continues to deteriorate. Give up. So, a little bit of a different message in the parody, but love both of these. And just the coincidence that these came up, I thought it was an opportunity to share this. One of the guys at our home meeting also mentioned that Desiderata was read at his wedding. So, coincidence, is that odd or is it God? Anyway, that will do it for this episode. I did record a new conversation this week, and back to doing that. In a few weeks, on July 20th, we're going to be recording a roundtable discussion on changing the wording on Tradition 11. So if you're interested in being part of that discussion, please email me at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com, and I'd be happy to send you the link. And that will be at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're doing this to accommodate those in the UK. So if you want to be part of that discussion, yes, please email me. If you had any other questions about the podcast or want to be a future guest, please email me there as well, jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Like I mentioned, I did get a few requests to share stories, and I need to coordinate with those people. Like I said, things have been very, very busy, but I'm trying to stay on top of the emails. Thinking of emails, if you have any feedback for the podcast, if you have any songs of recovery that you want to share, any feedback on specific episodes, You can email us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. With that, I'm going to close out this episode. I thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.